Okay, so this is a downwind movie. I know it's horrendously long and not many people will want to watch the full length of it, or any of it, I don't know. I've done a short edit and an Instagram edit, so if that's all you can handle, I don't blame you, to be perfectly honest. This isn't going to be the most interesting viewing compared to a lot of downwinding videos out there, but I could be wrong. Maybe this is the only one that is literally complete footage from beginning to end. The only bit that I've sped up is that bit just leading up to me getting up onto foil. All the rest of it, I haven't altered or edited anything. There are bits where you'll notice suddenly I appear a lot more zoomed in, and that's because the GoPro 360 Max records in bursts of 8 minutes, and you have to edit each of those bits in terms of the perspective, where you want to view from. And if you zoom in or zoom out on one clip, when you edit the next clip, you might not get it exactly the same level of zoom. But I think I have managed to stitch together a seamless run from beginning to end. I think it's roughly half an hour, just over half an hour to do this 10k run. Oddly, I decided to use the PNG 1010. I don't know why, I just wanted to try it. I've been wanting to try it for a downwind run for ages, and I didn't think this was going to be the footage that I put out for, just showing a downwind run of the integrated e-foil mast, because it was very light wind, very small swell, and I wanted to show it in better conditions. But I've just injured my foot, and I'm not going to be able to do any foiling or recording for 4 to 6 weeks, so I thought I'd use this because it's pretty good footage, even though the swell is ridiculously small, and as ever, the 360 camera makes it look even smaller. It was around about 10 knots, I think, on average, definitely dropping to 8 knots or below by the end, but when I started it was sort of in the 8 to 12 knot range. So back to why the heck did I use the PNG 1010? Well, I've been using the 1300 and other really big foils, wingspans, that sort of thing for most of my downwinding recently. So I just wanted to use something with a lot more sort of throw around maneuverability. And the 1010 has still got seriously low stall speed. So I thought, I knew it was a bit slow, and given a choice, I would definitely use a slightly faster foil, like the HPS 1050 would have probably been fine for today. I know that the PNG 1300 would have been fine for today. The swell wasn't big enough to have been too much for that foil. I'm not sure about the ART 1099. I think maybe the swell wasn't consistent enough for the 1099 today. But anyway, apart from being a little bit on the slow side and me having to pump more as a result, the 1010 did actually pretty well. I thought it coped with the conditions quite nicely. I was actually using the 460 tail simply to give it a little bit more gliding speed, but put it this way, now that I've tried the experiment downwinding on the 1010, I will stick to the higher aspect foils. Although, if that's the only foil I've got, I certainly won't let it stop. Anyway, that's going away from the main topic in hand, which is how does the integrated mast with the motor in e-foil position, how does it perform downwinding? I think in all fairness, it's a little bit like the situation I've just described with the PNG 1010. Given a choice, I would always choose to use the motor higher on the mast so it's out of the water while you're on foil. But having said that, I was really pleasantly surprised by how much fun and how easy it was to downwind with the motor in the e-foil position. Yes, there is a bit more drag than having the motor out of the water. I mean, that's completely obvious. But how much drag is too much drag, I think is going to be totally up to the individual. For me, it's perfectly acceptable if this was my only option. You can still have a whole load of fun, you can still do everything that you want to do, you get used to it very, very quickly. There are times when I was like, oh, this is a bit draggy, but at the same time, I'm downwinding, and I'm having a whole load of fun. I keep saying the word fun, and that's what it's all about. I mean, you're not going to get 100% top level performance with the motor pod below the water, but you are going to have a whole load of fun, and it also makes it so much easier. I would say that this is probably the easiest way to learn how to downwind, and if you can already downwind, it still makes everything a lot easier. I would definitely use this mast, this whole setup for downwinding. There's no two ways about it, and in these seriously light wind, small swell conditions, if it can cope with these conditions, then when the swell gets a little bit bigger, or decent size, then I think as the swell gets bigger, you're going to notice that drag less and less and less. So this video, as much as it's annoying for me putting out a video that's such small swell, because I really wanted to show it off at its best, actually this is probably a really good video to put out, because it's such marginal conditions, yet it still clearly copes really well. Now, the first third of this downwind run, I'm doing a lot of pumping, but trust me, most of that pumping is due to two factors. Firstly, this swell was very small, and secondly, the PNG 1010 is a slow foil, well, slower than other higher aspect foils of its size, and as a result, I'm pumping a lot because it just doesn't have the speed and therefore the glide. Once you're on a decent bit of swell, it's fine, it's absolutely fine, and the advantage is that you can carve around, and the maneuverability is way much better than a big foil like the 1300. So yeah, all the pumping, not all of the pumping I should say, is down to the extra drag from the mast being below water. I really can't think of any other disadvantages other than the slight extra drag from the motor being below water. So let's have a little think about the advantages, because there are quite a few. First of all, taking off is a lot easier in my opinion, because I think with the motor so far down the mast, it provides more of a sort of like a lifting force. So as long as you are mindful of that when you're accelerating and you keep the nose of the board down, it's almost like it's got extra power because of that extra lift it's providing. So getting up onto foil does feel like you've got more power. I think you could use a slightly smaller foil, maybe a slightly smaller board, maybe a combination of the two. But I did notice that it was considerably easier getting up on foil. In fact, I've played around with this, not in this run, but I've played around with it. And whereas with the motor in assist position, I generally need to have a bit of swell pushing me as I'm getting up onto foil. With the motor in E4 position, I don't. I can literally be heading in any direction, even against the wind, and I can get up on foil. In actual fact, going downwind in the direction of the swell, sometimes it's a bit harder because you've got to time it just right with the swell behind you. But going parallel with the swell in either direction actually is easier to get up on foil. But I think you use a little bit more battery power, and certainly going against the wind is harder and uses more battery power. But like I said, I've been testing just to see what it can do, and you can still actually do it. The other big advantage of this E-foil motor position is, of course, you can be at any height on the mast and the props are always fully underwater, so you get that seamless, smooth power delivery. I said in my last review video that because the motor and the props are so far underwater, I'm sure some of the smooth power delivery comes from there being an uninterrupted stream of water flowing through the props. which makes it feel so much smoother. But there is a flip side to that, because whenever you pull the trigger, you've got to be really mindful of anticipating that that it's going to force the nose of the board up. So you really do have to make sure that you are ready to counteract that force of the motor or the props pushing the nose of the board up. So you've just got to remember, as you pull the trigger, to counteract that by putting more weight onto your front foot and keeping the nose of the board down. And to begin with, it does feel awkward, but I've long since gotten used to it, and really it literally is second nature now, and it doesn't bother me at all. There are still times where I make the odd mistake and I get a bit of a considerable nose wobble, and sometimes when I lose my balance because of it and fall off, but that's getting fewer and fewer times now. So yeah, I don't really see that as a disadvantage anymore. It's just something that you have to get used to and adapt to, like any aspect of foiling skills. And I should have said that it's not just when you pull the trigger, because of the extra lift trying to force the nose up. It's the opposite. When you release the trigger, you need to shift your weight backwards onto your back foot, just at that point where the thrust from the motor cuts out. If you don't transfer your weight to the back foot, then you are going to nosedive. But like I say, you get used to it very quickly, and once you've transferred your weight to the back foot, at the point where you take your finger off the trigger, then it's just back to the normal weight distribution, equal between your feet, and it's just foiling as normal. Now, nearly done with the commentary. There is one other thing that I've noticed which I'm finding it really difficult to get my head around, and that's ease of maneuverability. Because if you've watched my previous review of using this eFoil integrated mast in the surf, you'll possibly remember that I said I found it became noticeably more difficult to do more sort of dynamic, fast or quick changes of direction. So maneuverability, when you're doing gentle carves, is not a problem, but when you want to really sort of swing it from side to side and do tight turns, when powered by a wave or a big bit of swell, then I did notice that it actually made it a little bit unstable, having the motor pod underwater. But for downwinding, that is not the case. I just don't know why. I don't know whether it's something to do with the energy levels or the way that the water flow. Perhaps, maybe that's got something to do with it. But yeah, turning, carving, anything like that while downwinding, I didn't notice any issues whatsoever. It felt perfectly normal. So yeah, if anybody can give me a reason why that might be, I'd be very, very interested to hear. But I did feel that that problem I encountered when using this setup for surfing, it just wasn't an issue at all while downwinding. Now there's one other thing that I'd like to speculate on while I'm here, and that's that I think, although I can't prove because there are too many variables that just can't be controlled, I think I get longer run times from each battery charge when the motor is at eFoil position. Now my theory for this, and I could be wrong, but my theory is that with the motor lower down on the mast, that extra length of mast is a lever, and as such, in that position, you get more of a turning force, so it's got more lift. The thrust, it doesn't matter where the motor position is, high or low on the mast. The forward thrust is going to be the same, but with the motor lower down, it doesn't have to work so hard to generate the same lift. Or you could look at it from the point of view that with the motor high up close to the board, that it has to work harder to generate the same force of lift because of the shorter lever. Anyway, that's just my theory, and if you think I'm right or wrong and you want to comment, then please let me know, and I'll be interested to hear what you've got to say. Well, thankfully, that is it from the commentary point of view. I will shut up now, or at least I will in a second, but be warned, I do start talking into the GoPro while I'm foiling towards the end of the video. So there are a few more ramblings, some of which make sense, some of which don't, because my mind just tends to wander. It just tends to flip from just across many different topics within a split second. So 1 minute I'm talking about one thing, the next minute I may be talking about something completely different. It's just whatever pops into my head at the time. So I apologise for that, but you might hear a few things that are interesting. You might not. Anyway, to briefly summarise, it is definitely possible to e-foil with the integrated mast with the motor in E4 position. Yes, there is a little bit of drag, obviously, from the motor, and therefore a little bit of reduced performance compared to if the motor is out of the water permanently, but it's still really good fun and very easy to downwind with it. I think if you're after peak performance, then you wouldn't be using the E4 mast anyway. But you know what? I think I'm actually confident enough to say that I really do think that the E-foil mast actually makes downwinding slightly easier than with the assist motor position. And it's all going to be relative to your own preferences and your own skill level, but really I think there are actually a lot of advantages to using the E4 position. If you're after the highest possible performance, then no. But if you're after the easiest possible way of getting into downwinding, especially starting off on a bigger board, then yeah, I genuinely think that this is going to be one of the easiest ways to learn how to downwind, not just with getting onto foil in the first place, but with getting through the flat sections. I mean, that's where the E4 mast excels, in my opinion. It really does excel because that ease of pulling the trigger and just moving through the flat sections without any issues whatsoever. When the motor is in assist position, when you're downwinding, it's actually quite difficult because it's obviously going to be very disturbed water state. The swell is swell and chop makes it very difficult to keep the board just above the water. So either the board is slapping against the water or the props are coming out of the water for too long, and as such that's actually quite difficult to e-foil for any distance when the water state is so disturbed. But E4 position makes that all super easy. Anyway, there we go. That little brush with the kite surfer there, who I do not know why he decided to just head straight towards me and do one of those skiddy slidey stops, literally 3 or 4 foot in front of me. The mind boggles, but hey ho, no one get injured. Right, I'm going to shut up now, I promise, and leave you to watch or turn off as you see fit. Like I said before, there is a little bit more talk from me, but live chatter while I'm actually on the water. So yeah, you've got that to look forward to. Lucky you.
Okay, so this downwinder has been 8 to 10 knots. I'm about 7 or 8k in. I'm on the E-foil integrated mast. Now get this, I'm on the 1010. I don't know why, I just thought I'd give it a go. I should really be on the 1300, but I just wanted to give it a go. See what's possible. Put the E-foil position through its paces, and yep, as expected, the 1010 is slow. It's not a downwinding foil. It hasn't got the speed of glide that you would want from a downwinding foil. But I put the 460 flat tail on, gives it a little bit better speed and glide. Not enough, a little bit. And yeah, I'm pumping a lot more than I would normally, but enough glides and enough assist from the swell to not be worn out. I can definitely feel the drag from the motor, but it is definitely downwindable. And let's face it, even if it was 15 knots, 12 to 15, the swell is like double the size of what it is now. And the sun is about to go down, and as such the wind has dropped off, and with it goes the wind-blown swell and chop, really. But yeah, this has been an experiment. I'm glad I did it. It's good exercise. Would I do it again? If that was all that was available to me, then yeah. But proper high aspect foil for downwinding. I think the 1050 would have been perfect for today. HPS 1050 or PNG 1300. Don't think there's quite enough for the 1099 today. You've seen a look, good little glides here, nice bit of swell, carving around, stay on the back of the bump, keeping the crest of the trough in front of me. That's the idea. Pushing ahead now to the next one. So I'm going too far close to shore, so I should really be doing right. Staying high on the bump, watching and following the cresting peak just in front of the trough that's in front of me. So I'm now just carving around, lining up another one, pushing forward to this one, finding another gap through here. There's another gap, push forward, banking left so I don't have to go over that bump. I can just weave my way through them in order to stay on the bump that I want. Right, and immediately left to do the same pumping, but just carving. So again, wasn't as successful, and this time curved the other way. Now I've lost it. So, first FoilDrive, flip left to the next bump, off with the motor. Carving, I want to stay heading towards that bump there, push forward, and I'm not going to go over the top, back, forward, do another bump, that one as it forms. Rigid, strong enough. So, pushing that up. Here. Back, upper pumps, join the bump that was behind me, carving to the left to stay high on the bump, carving back to the right because the crest is now over there, wiggle my way between some bumps, keeping that crest in front of me. I'm going to carve off, pump, going over a bump, maybe two, and turning back on to follow another bump. Lift it 2 times. End of the line, that house there, that's the 10k mark, that's where my car is parked, that's where I must finish. Oh. I've still got 50% of the battery left. Well, now I've pulled the trigger, 42, but it was way over 50 at rest. Following that bump, following that one, following it, keeping on. There's another one that's forming, carve, sharp to the right, a couple of pumps, and I'm still following this one, keeping high, carving around, following it as it forms and reforms. Okay, now I'm going to head back here because that's where the action is. Staying high on the bump behind this, carving right to keep following it. Now sharp back to the right, sorry that was left and then a right, not a right and a right. Carving, carving, a couple of pumps to keep me higher. Now I've got to go back. Looks like I can bank left onto this bump. Okay, weave my way in here, pushing forward through the gap. Now we've got a nice long line, if I can stay on it. Okay, so following this bump, carving, joining a little bit further over to the right, downwind to stay on the bump. That's okay. Following the crest that's in front of me, I'm staying on the bump, carving to the left to stay high, now carving to the right, left to squeeze through the lumps, get back on top of the bump, but I want to follow that crest for. I can carve around a bit, let the bump go underneath me, carve back to the left, rejoin, even do it the other way. Bump, go, Two bumps. Go in front of me. Here we go. This is this one. So, oh, I know, because we're so close to the shore now. This has turned into a shore run right here. Thank you, FoilDrive.